Hi, I'm Savanthi Murthy, and I'll be presenting our paper titled Individually Vulnerable, Collectively Safe: The Security and Privacy Practices of Households with Older Adults, that I wrote with my co-authors Karthik, Bhat, Sauvik, and Neha Kumar. Older adults are especially vulnerable to online cybersecurity and privacy, abbreviated as SP, threats such as phishing, ransomware, and targeted misinformation campaigns. Prior work in the emerging discipline of social cybersecurity suggests that one promising path towards addressing this challenge may be through the design of cooperative and stewarded interfaces, or systems that support groups of individuals in working together or working on behalf of one another to mitigate an individual's susceptibility to SP threats. But it remains unclear how cooperative and stewarded tools might be designed and implemented, or how such stewardship might be supported in the context of assisting older populations with identifying and responding to SP threats. When we collected our data, cybercrime in India had been increasing every year, and we can see that the trend has continued, especially in larger cities like Bengaluru, which had the maximum number of cybercrimes in the country last year. At the same time, older adults or senior citizens, as they're called in India, have become more active on social media and started using services like online shopping, ride sharing, and online banking more regularly. As a result, there has also been an increase in cybercrimes against older adults in India. Prior work comparing the privacy attitudes and behaviors of people in the US and India suggests that people in India take a more social approach to SP. We identified this as an opportunity to conduct a qualitative study to understand the social SP practices in India, especially among older adult populations and the communities in which they're embedded, to gain insights into how we might design cooperative and stewarded tools that help older adults with identifying and responding to SP threats. Specifically, we sought to understand how older adults in India approach SP, how they're supported or not supported by their household members, and what insights these behaviors might offer for the design of social cybersecurity systems. I'd like to mention the prior work that formed the foundation for our study. Prior work has studied digital housekeeping and cybersecurity as collaborative practices within small social groups. Prior work has also explored why older adults are more susceptible to SP threats, recommended designs for educational SP interventions, and made the case for increasing autonomy of older adults. Finally, prior work around SP in the Global South have examined the privacy practices of other marginalized groups like women, compared SP behaviors across different countries, and advocated for moving beyond the one-size-fits-all approach while looking to design SP tools for populations across different countries and cultures. These works set the stage for us to study the nuances of Indian older adults' approaches to SP. By contextualizing prior findings in a setting where households already manage SP collaboratively, we unpack how the dynamics of control, digital literacy, and agency play out in this context and provide recommendations which are important to consider while designing social and collaborative tools for SP management. To do this, we conducted 20 semi-structured interviews with participants from 8 different households. 11 of them are older adults and 9 participants are the family members of these older adults. We began by interviewing older adults from urban middle-income households in Bengaluru and Mysuru, which are 2 large cities in South India, where smartphones as well as other computing devices are routinely used. Upon discovering the collective nature of the SP behaviors that emerged in our early interviews, we decided to expand our study to also include the perspective of family members, making the household our unit of analysis instead. Next, I'll describe our findings. We found that SP practices within the households that we interviewed were collaborative and that household members took on different roles in these groups. For example, the families we interviewed had a self-appointed tech manager who laid down guidelines for safe technology use at home and took action to mitigate or prevent SP threats on behalf of others in the household. In turn, older adults tended to have their digital behaviors monitored and their SP stewarded by these tech managers, as we can see from the quote. Even though they established guidelines, regularly monitored family members' devices, and were the tech experts at home, the tech managers acknowledged gaps in their SP knowledge. They usually looked online or reached out to close ties in their larger communities when they required assistance themselves. We also found that within families, individual members were comfortable with looking at and sharing each other's devices and prioritized collective safety over individual privacy. However, between families and broader social groups, SP conversations were limited to cautionary tales and personal experiences. The responsibility of keeping older adults safe from SP threats, combined with the perception that they're vulnerable to SP threats, motivated tech managers to take a somewhat heavy-handed approach. They would manage and even control older adults' actions on their smartphones, such as changing settings, which can't be changed back without their help, and deleting apps without consulting the older adults. This was done to protect them against the threat models that the tech managers themselves held. But in doing so, the tech managers required older adults to adhere to guidelines meant to defend against an imposed threat model, often one which did not align with the older adults' conceptions of SP threats. As a result, older adults often did not comprehend these imposed threat models and occasionally ignored the tech managers' SP guidelines in favor of convenience and even entertainment. Several tech managers acknowledged that their heavy-handed approach could lead to loss of agency for the older adults, but they could not think of any other way to keep the older adults safe. Older adult participants were generally grateful for help from tech managers. However, we also identified three downstream consequences of imposed threat models caused by tech managers imposing guidelines and controlling older adults' accounts and SP settings. First, older adult participants did not appear to be informed of the extent of their digital footprint. For example, one of our older adult participants had a Gmail account that was created in her name to use YouTube, but she didn't even know of its existence. Second, they were often unexposed and therefore unaware of the consequences of security breaches, as the quote on the screen illustrates. Third, they found it challenging and sometimes unnecessary to learn more about SP or technology, limiting growth in their digital and SP literacies. Based on our findings, we identified three key discussion areas that I'll talk about next. For tech managers, sometimes the challenge was that they did not know enough. At other times, the challenge was knowing more than they wished to disclose or discuss with older adults. We also found that several of our participants served as tech managers by proxy and expressed a desire to assist older adults from extended families and communities when these older adults' actual tech managers lived far away, sometimes even in different countries. These scenarios highlight three opportunities for supporting tech managers in their roles. First, we could make SP resources accessible and available to them as learning pathways that could reduce their burden and allow them to fulfill their roles with greater ease. Second, we could provide teaching pathways such that tech managers can provide assistance in ways that do not infantilize or disempower and can be supported in introducing complex constructs in ways that promote receptivity. Finally, given that many tech managers perform their role as intermediaries or proxies, it is evident that this role could be supported through pathways of translation that do not necessarily require all trust to be placed in the intermediary. In generating pathways for learning, teaching, or translation, it is necessary to do it in a way that engages and supports stewardship and avoids paternalism. Tech managers controlled older adults' devices and accounts with the intention of allowing them to explore different types of services while not having to worry about SP. These behaviors sometimes manifested as making changes to older adults' SP settings, performing actions on their behalf, and even controlling the way they represented themselves on digital platforms. These actions were never intentionally malicious, but were often done with the knowledge that they would negatively impact older adults' digital agency. In such cases, the tech managers unilaterally decided what was best for the older adult without consulting them or explaining their actions. This absolute stewardship borders on paternalism. It reduces older adults' digital agency and reduces their self-efficacy when it comes to technology usage. Family support offered to older adults in the form of paternalistic stewardship did not always help them gain experience or independence. It instead resulted in fewer opportunities for these adults to gain greater experience and practice their digital skills. The older adults we interviewed were less accustomed to managing their own SP, and they also did not voice the need to learn about SP on new apps or services. This is likely because there was always someone else, like the tech manager, to take care of the boring or difficult parts associated with SP, and because of that, they did not have these skills or practices, and they also did not experience the need to cultivate them. In other words, we observed a cycle of low digital and SP literacies that could be challenging to get out of. Tech managers of the household attend perhaps too closely to the low SP literacies of older adults, leading to reduced incentive for the latter to engage in enhancing their own skills. To overcome this, we recommend that tools designed to teach older adults about SP concepts and practices must make the need for SP explicit and clearly illustrate the consequences of not adopting such behaviors. Some examples could be to include short conversations about SP between characters in their favorite shows that they already like, or interactive tutoring systems that provide just-in-time SP information when SP relevant decisions need to be made. These endeavors could help transition older adults' threat models from imposed ones to informed ones. They could provide older adults the structural opportunities that are needed for informed and long-term adoption of SP guidelines and practices so that they eventually become an inherent part of their practices instead of being unquestioned rules that they're following. This could help gradually dismantle the cycle of low SP literacy and paternalistic stewardship that we observed. Thank you so much for taking the time to engage with our research and for listening to this presentation.